Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mobbers, sobbers, and grave robbers, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And you join me on a typically sordid and solemn winter's day here in the north of England. It would seem that we are now an annexed part of Newfoundland, and we get essentially what amounts to about a quarter of an hour of sunshine every single day. It's perpetually dark. But I've come to brighten and illuminate and enlighten on this terrible Friday morning / midday with a little bit of a random review of my second reading of Anthony Trollope's 1875 novel, The Way We Live Now. Just to let off a bit of steam, first of all, some housekeeping. I was, for my sins and to my great detriment, partaking in the Lex Fridman podcast yesterday afternoon / evening. He had on the Amazonian quadrillionaire Jeff Bezos to talk about all sorts of things, and he uttered the bizarre hackneyed phrase used by many middle-aged quadrillionaires, which is that everybody's lives on the planet these days are indisputably better than everybody's lives on the planet, you know, than our Edwardian brethren, than our mid-20th century brethren, our forebears. Apparently everything is indisputably better, and they arrive at this conclusion, of course, because they can only look at things through an economic prism. Nothing about... I can't disagree with anything much more. First of all, how on earth do you get inside the head of somebody that existed 75 years ago? It may well be that, of course, I am, whatever it is, 400% materially better off than people in the past, but it's just a horrid hackneyed phrase that they just toss off randomly, and is, I think, thoroughly arguable. But anyway, so yes, so nothing about social disintegration, nothing about youth mental health crises, nothing about the rise of AI, nothing about the fact that in 250 years 78% of the Earth's surface is going to be utterly uninhabitable. Nothing about that. But one of the many bits of sophistry that came out of Bezos' mouth there. I also, this morning on my walk to Cafe Nero for a boosting caffeine shot, my Friday treat, I was fortunate enough to run into the vociferous backbench MP for Kingston upon Hull North, Miss Diana Johnson, or Mrs. Diana Johnson, I believe she's wedded, and she, well, I happened to utter the ruefully predictable heckle of, "You'll never get in," which I was looking down at my coffee, so she didn't notice quite who it was. There was a bit of a crowd around. But yeah, I just thought how easy I could have made of myself a political assassin this morning had I had in my person a machete or something that could do a good deal of damage. I could well have been on mainline news for having executed a conscientious member of Parliament, as is the case in free democracies. I don't know why it is that I'm sharing these weird thoughts of mine with you, but I suppose, you know, Moby's my washpot. This is going to be a way to share my feelings. But anyway, let us not dawdle, Joseph. This is Trollope's 1875 novel, The Way We Live Now. If you haven't seen the first half of my coverage of this, then do go back and do so. I did this at the start of the week, so that would be thoroughly entertaining and would be a little bit more commensurate with your viewing of this one. But yes, I am going to do a little bit of I'm going to come at this from a different angle today. I welcome you also along to the casting couch, because I thought that it would be also wise in order to, I don't really know, just to, it would be better, I would be better able to communicate the story with you if I were to give you examples of the people that, or the characters that people Trollope's world. And so I'm going to give you, if I were to be commissioned to make a new production of Trollope's The Way We Live Now, then I have myself a casting couch, and I have got a fleet of actors and prominent people in the world who I think would be apposite in their allotted roles. Yes, so without further ado, I'm going to give you some of the characters in here and who I think would best people Trollope's world, as I say. So we have first of all, it has already been committed to cinema. I think it was the early noughties or the 90s or something. Cillian Murphy's in there, of course. Matthew, I think it's Matthew McFadden's in there as well, and David Suchet, famous for Poirot. Hercule Poirot is in there as Melmotte. But Matthew McFadden gets in everywhere. I don't know why it is that he gets in everywhere. He is absolutely awful. Somehow he got the role as Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, of course. Miss Keira Knightley was in there as well. Both of them are terrible. Keira Knightley is a really, really, really convincing goldfish, but beyond that, I don't think she can act her way out of a wet paper bag. And Matthew McFadden isn't prepossessing or dispossessing in any way, which is what Darcy's supposed to be, so that doesn't work. But neither of those are going to be in there. They seem quite ludicrously to be in every single production of a canonical literary work. Any dramatisation, they seem to be in there. But anyway, I'm gabbing on. So, hopefully, I am going to be able to edit things and see to it that as I am detailing the person that is going to play said any characters, they are going to appear rather miraculously here by the wonders of modern technology. If they don't appear, then I'm going to be continually embarrassed because I'm going to keep doing that and the person's not going to be there, and it's all down to my technological ineptitude. But nonetheless, let us press on. Augustus Melmotte, who is the rather alluring and mysterious great financier, capital G, capital F, who has landed in London and is the darling of much of London affluent society. He is wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice, supposedly. He has piles of cash. He has, therefore, great influence, and all of the many, many people that are asset-rich but cash-poor, the Carberries and the Longstaffs and all sorts of other people, seek his companionship because, of course, they want his economic favour. And I thought, ideal for that, I went through Piers Morgan, I went through Rupert Murdoch, who else could have played it? Peter Suchet probably does a good job, but I finally landed, I even went through Christoph Waltz, one of Tarantino's favourite men, but I finally arrived upon, hopefully they're there now, that is indeed, as I'm sure you're aware, who is it that I've got there? Jesus Christ, I've suddenly forgotten. Who is it that I've got there? It is... Oh, Jim Broadbent. Yeah, Jim Broadbent from of Only Fools and Horses fame. He manages to be sort of appropriately ferret-like. You can see in his eyes that he is going to be very capable of seeming shifty. He is, as far as I'm aware, he's never played a decent-minded character, and yet also is capable of conveying sort of caution and being fretful as well. So he can be a devil, but can also be a rabbit in the headlights, which is exactly pretty much what Augustus Melmotte is. Next up, we have Lady Carberry, who we start at the story, a semi-successful novelist who, because she has got no money whatsoever, wants to make her family comfortable by marrying off her two children. Now, I have got, because she is wry and because she is very capable and very conscientious, and also very attractive, as it's said, I have the morning news presenter Susanna Reid, as I'm hoping you can see on your screen now. She, as I'm sure you're aware, ladies and gentlemen, could scrutinise my news bulletin any day. She's an absolute beauty and is also obviously very, very intelligent, a very good speaker, but is capable of being, I think, quite affectatious and a little bit shallow, which is essentially what Lady Carberry is. So I think she would be a good fit. She's not an actress, but I'm sure she could, I'm sure if we bunged her with £500,000, I'm sure she'd do it. Next up we have Felix Carberry, who is the son of said Miss Reid, who is going to marry the daughter of Augustus Melmotte, Jim Broadbent's daughter, Marie Melmotte. And Felix Carberry is going to be played by, what's his name, Sam, I've got it down here, Sam Claflin, who, his career as a foppish, useless, irresponsible, selfish, completely careless, impecunious, posh nurk is well documented. He was Alistair Ryle in Rich Boys, hopefully he's there now, and yeah, I'm sure he could do it very much easily again. Well, he'd need to darken his hair, but he's pretty beautiful, as I'm sure you'll agree. A few of you idiots had the temerity to message me on Instagram and say that they saw myself in Felix Carberry. Now, I don't quite know why that is. I've just reeled off 5 or 6 really horrid adjectives, apart from the fact that he is a gorgeous specimen who most females drool over. Apart from that, I really can't see the comparison. So you guys are going to either have to shut the hell up or just unsubscribe. Next up, we have Marie Melmotte, Augustus's daughter, who Felix is going to be forced upon and actually woos. Miss Melmotte does fall in love with Felix, and we'll come to the complications a little bit later on, but I believe that she would best be played by Carrie Mulligan, I think her name is. I've got it written down here. Yeah, Carrie Mulligan, who played Daisy Buchanan in, I think it was Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby. She's very good at seeming timorous and skittish and dainty and mindless and a little bit sort of absent-minded and careless and, you know, ditzy and damsel-esque, but then also is capable, of course, when she's fornicating with Gatsby and being a little bit, being an infidel. She is capable also of turning it round and being assertive and being pretty admirable in the end. So I think she would be pretty good as that. There she is again. If you can't see her, something has failed, folks. My editors have gone wrong. I don't have Talk TV like Piers Morgan, unfortunately. This is just me in my shed, folks, building a nuclear bomb. Next up, we have Roger Carberry, who is the cousin of Felix and Hector Carberry. And I struggle with this one because he's the only person who is morally admirable and also capable in the novel. There are plenty of people who don't wish ill on anybody else, but they are in and of themselves useless. Hector Carberry, Ruby Ruggles, Mrs. Pipkin, that kind of person who wish, as I say, no ill on anybody else, but that you can't really take them seriously. You can't admire them. You're not. They don't steel themselves, steel, in the face of such malevolent society, and so you can't really consider them. Roger's the only person like that. So I've gone for. I think his name's Charles. Yeah, Charles Dance, who I think he's appeared in The Crown. He's been in again, hopefully he'll be here. He's appeared in a jolly well lot. I think with a little bit of digitisation of his face, a little bit of what's it called, digital brushing or something. You could probably do something with AI, a deep fake, which would make him look maybe 20 years young. He's probably 70. Roger Carberry's, I think we're made to understand, middle-aged, 50s. I'm sure he could do that with a little bit of makeup as well. He is kind and yet, as we say, assertive and pedagogical and very capable of inspiring both fear and flummox in many of his with many of his people that he speaks with. And so I think he'd be pretty good. I'm not sure. All you need is an assertive middle-aged male. You needn't really go for a star if we're on a budget, but we're not on a budget because Warner Brothers have given me presumably about £400 trillion to produce this, so I needn't do that. Next up, of course, we have I've only gone for Paul Montague, who's going to be played by Benedict Cumberbatch. You cannot have it. This is a sainted principle from which you cannot divert. In British cinema, you have to have, if you've got a film produced in Britain with a majority of British actors, you have to have Benedict Cumberbatch because he is wonderful with a capital W. He's going to play Paul Montague, who has gone to America in his youth and has been sort of messed about by Mr. Fisker. He's one of Felix's friends at the Bear Garden Club. And I think he could play it quite well. He's reasonably attractive. He is capricious, but is, I think, well-meaning at heart. He's one of those morally ambiguous people in the novel who isn't completely and utterly demonic to the core, but isn't Hosanna either. Next up, of course, we have Mrs. Hurtle, who we understand that Paul Montague has promised himself to in the middle of the novel and must really do away with. He can't help but be courteous to her because she's come all the way from New York. She believes she is a divorcee and skips across the channel and tries to win Mr. Montague back, and is very, very eloquent. They go to the theatre, they display artistic acuity. She's a wonderful interlocutor, and I really, 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 really do love her. Mrs. Hurtle, she is going to be played by, who have we got here? Mrs. Hurtle, Charlotte Riley of Peaky Blinders fame, because she's looks very, I think she looks quite daunting. She might be, again, she'll be here, hopefully. She is the partner / wife / spouse of the illustriously attractive Tom Hardy. She's got quite a sort of steely, sharp jaw. She looks, as I say, very, sometimes she could instill fear, but yet she's capable of also being very, very kind, very warming. And the scene between her and Hector Carberry, when Hector, again, spoiler alert, when, if you haven't read the novel, bugger off. I'm giving away lots of answers here. Hetta is reconciled to Paul as a result of Miss Hurtle's lovely speech, absolutely lovely speech. So yeah, I think she would be capable of doing that. Next up, we have, I've only got a few more, we've got Dolly Longstaff, who is convinced that Augustus Melmotte is a complete fraud as his reputation begins to diminish, and swears that Pickering Park that Augustus Melmotte has bought off his family has been bought as the result of a forged signature. He is absolutely certain on the fact that he never put his name on the dotted line, and he is, yeah, he's sort of raffish and pretty interested with money. He's not nearly as he hasn't got the proclivity to carnal abandon that Felix has. He's not nearly as hateable as Felix, but he's morally ambiguous at best. So I've gone for what's his name, Tobias Menzies, who was in Sky Atlantic's The Terror, which dramatises the ill-fated journey of some sea captain to rediscover the Northwest Passage or another aspect of the Northwest Passage. He was really good in there, dutiful and yet troubled and pensive and flawed and all the rest of it. So I think he could do that pretty well. He wouldn't have to change much. Hopefully the picture's there of him in The Terror. And then what else have we got? Oh, last of all, we have Mr. Squeercombe. Of course, Susanna Reid isn't an actress, and neither is my next actor for this. Squeercombe, who is the the lawyer / barrister for the Longstaffs, who really, I think, initiates the downfall of Augustus, because he is the person that asks for ready money to be paid on Pickering Park by Augustus Melmotte. And if you happen to be somebody who has survived on credit and reputation and the widely held belief that you are rich rather than your veritable riches, then the person that asks for a lump sum to be paid on Pickering Park is, of course, the first person that is going to doubt your wealth. And that is Squeercombe. He is a scheming, capable, very, 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 very insightful young lawyer who never says anything that is inexact. He's so judicious and so well thought out. He's, very, very, very admirable, I think. Obviously, he's going to rise to great powers in the world, and I can imagine the fan fiction on Squeercombe would be great. I have got the former advisor to the Prime Minister, Dominic Cummings, here. Of course, Mr. Cummings can't act his way out of a wet paper bag, as is my idiom, but I think, as I say, if we load his pockets with £500,000 sterling, I think he'd probably do the job. He's really, really good at, being in the shadows and supposing to be this wondrous pseudo-intellectual that's going to solve all of the problems and all about the Odyssean education that he's written about and things. I think he'd be damn good. So that is my cast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming along with me to cast the characters in Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now. But this has absolutely pleased me until the cows have come home. I sent out an email to people that knew that I was watching, knew that I was reading it rather, and I think it was on chapter 82, so a good 80% of the way through the book, when Augustus Melmotte steals himself, again, E-L, who steals himself in preparation of the litigation battle that's going to come in the next few pages, that never actually eventuates. I was suddenly on the side of Mr. Melmotte, this horridly incorrigible, duplicitous, affectatious twat. All of a sudden, I was backing him. There's something about the rags to riches story. I'm going to read a few sections out in a moment. Something about whether somebody climbs the mountain of fame and prosperity in a poor or good way. I don't seem to care an awful lot. I just like somebody that had nothing, had no halfpennies. They didn't have two halfpennies to rub together. Wasn't loved by many family members. Didn't have much to his name at the start of of his life, and then rises up to the top. There's not any consanguinity between myself and Augustus Melmotte. I just quite like that storyline. But anyway, I'm going to read a few sections out. Some of these are just insurpassably brilliant from Trollope. He just pulls it out time and time again. So this is when Augustus is steeling himself for the fight. He had once been imprisoned for fraud at Hamburg and had come out of jail a pauper, friendless, with all his wretched antecedents against him. Now he was a member of the British House of Parliament, the undoubted owner of perhaps the most gorgeously furnished house in London, a man with an established character for high finance, a commercial giant whose name was a familiar word on all the exchanges of the two hemispheres. Even though he should be condemned to penal servitude for life, he would not all die. Which again speaks to the sanctity of reputation, which Trollope always talks about in here. This is when Hector Carberry goes around to Mrs. Hurtle, where Mrs. Hurtle, against her own interests, essentially advocates for the moral rectitude of Paul Montague and persuades Hector to go forth. But this is a great description of her when Hector comes into the room. Mrs. Hurtle rose from her chair and came forward to greet her visitor, putting out both her hands to do so. She was dressed with the most scrupulous care, simply and in black, without an ornament of any kind, without a ribbon or a chain or a flower. But with some woman's purpose at her heart, she had so attired herself as to look her very best. Was it that she thought that she would vindicate to her rival their joint lover's first choice, or that she was minded to teach the English girl that an American woman might have graces of her own? As she came forward, she was gentle and soft in her movements, and a pleasant smile played round her mouth. Hector, at the first moment, was almost dumbfounded by her beauty, by that and by her ease and exquisite self-possession. It's obviously prototypically Victorian and Trollopian, but it's damn good. And then, towards the end of the novel, when, Roger Carberry, played by Charles Dance in Joe Spivey's production of The Way We Live Now, coming next summer, 2024, this is when, it becomes obvious that Hector's going to have Paul Montague. Roger Carberry has wanted Hector forever and ever and ever. But let's go forth. So this is, Roger Carberry had not yielded in this matter. He had not brought himself to determine that he would recognise Paul and Hector as acknowledged lovers, without a fierce inward contest. Two convictions had been strong in his mind, both of which were opposed to this recognition. The first telling him that he would be a fitter husband for the girl than Paul Montague, and the second assuring him that Paul had ill-treated him in such a fashion that forgiveness would have been both foolish and unmanly. For Roger, though he was a religious man and one anxious to conform to the spirit of Christianity, would not allow himself to think that an injury should be forgiven unless the man who did the injury repented of his own injustice. As to giving his coat to the thief who had taken his cloak, he told himself that were he and others to be guided by that precept, honest industry would go naked in order that vice and idleness might be comfortably clothed. And then later on, when he talks about his appeals to Hector, what did love mean if not that? What could be the devotion which men so often affect to feel if it did not tend to self-sacrifice on behalf of the loved one? A man would incur any danger for a woman, would subject himself to any toil, would even die for her. But if this were done simply with the object of winning her, where was that real love of which sacrifice of self on behalf of another is the truest proof? So, by degrees, he resolved that the thing must be done. The man, though he had been bad to his friend, was not all bad. That's Paul Montague. He was one who might become good in good hands. He, Roger, was too firm of purpose and too honest of heart to buoy himself up into new hopes by assurances of the man's unfitness. What right had he to think that he could judge of that better than the girl herself? Now, I have written in the margin there, step aside, Mr. Tolstoy, because that is as good as a passage as you'll find in Anna Karenina. That's absolutely brilliant about somebody's inner confliction. And again, it never ceases to amaze. I've got a few criticisms. I think Trollope's dialogue towards the end is a little bit stulted, and I think he's metronomic and wanted to just produce, had a set daily word count. His dialogue at the end isn't great, between Lady Carberry and Mr. Brown, between who does Lady Carberry eventually marry? Does she marry Mr. Brown? I can't remember who it is she marries. I think they do. Yeah, they reunite. All of the late dialogue isn't brilliant. Trollope's treatment of the working class is really bizarre. So he is somebody who has shown clear appreciation of the vicissitudes of some of the maltreated in society, i.e. the women. He never fails to evoke the tender feminine power of girls, admirable in that sense, and revolutionary and revelatory and all the rest of it. But the paupers and the proletariat and the hoi polloi get absolutely, ransacked. John Crumb, who fights Felix Carby in the street and beats him to within an inch of his life, as the phrase goes, he's just some blundering troglodyte that has no interiority, really, cannot think beyond the fire of his loins or the security of his own wallet or purse. And so, that's the type of thing. It's the same in The Warden with all of Septimus Harding's enemies that want to rid him of his diocesan duties. But anyway, yeah, I don't think Trollope's very good with the working class. It doesn't give them an awful lot of agency, but that's a very, very small criticism. This guy, goodness me, he lived, this was published nearly 150 years ago. At his time of life, a dental infection would have had him killed, and it took him such a different era, would have taken him 3 months to get to, 3 years even, to get to Australia, whereas I, with a brief stop off at Dubai, can get there in 19 hours or whatever it is. And so for two people living in completely different eras, he is still able to do that whilst exercising authorial intervention by telling you that it's artifice and these are all just characters and this is a world, this is a book that you've bought, makes it so very believable and manages to grasp you by the collar and welcome you into his world. It speaks to the universality of everything that he talks of, to get a bit professorial with you. But yeah, I think this is just remarkable. It's big, so you're going to spend a week with the thing, even if you're a reasonably quick reader, you're going to spend some time with Trollope. But yeah, this is damn good. I absolutely loved it. Everything is resolved. If anything, again, spoiler alert, if you're still here and you haven't read the book, then you're a maniac. But I think he could have made Augustus Melmotte live on a little longer. He kills him has him commit suicide via prussic acid rather quickly, I think, and a bit precipitously. I think you could have had a lovely legal battle, which, for those who don't know it already, aren't furnished with the facts, that's my favourite part of Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. It's 85-90% of the way in. It's essentially a closing scene before Alyosha goes and sees the boys in the village with Fetukovich. I think legal battles are an excellent setting for a novel. You can do 10 chapters on it and you won't get bored if you do it correctly. I think Trollope would have been able to master that, and I think with Squeercombe and with Mr. Biderwhile and all of that, and the Longstaffs, I think Augustus Melmotte could have represented himself. He's not a very good speaker in Parliament, but I think that would have been possible, and that's how I would have done it. But Trollope's Trollope and I'm me. But yeah, enough about that. But yeah, I've waffled on for far too long. Let me know down below who it is that you would cast in certain roles. Obviously, I've missed out Hector Carberry, and who else is significant have I missed out? Oh, Georgiana Longstaff I've missed out. Mr. Breckhart, the person who happens to be Jewish and is therefore maligned by everybody. There's a few guys there that you could allot personalities for, so please do that in the comments. Tell me who it is you want there, but I've droned on already. This is nearly half an hour, so I'm going to say thank you ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.